Hello my dudes, and welcome to another Game Theory, game review and my thoughts and opinions about Far Cry. But in this video, I want you guys to tell me about your opinion on which is the best Far Cry. This is how Far Cry franchise improved. Let me know in the comments below. There are too many reviews and comparisons about Far Cry games, but I still have my opinions and first impressions, right? Unique opinions, I mean. So, I am just going to elaborate it. The Far Cry series is a franchise of first-person shooter, open-world computer and video games, named after the first game of the series. The first game, Far Cry, was developed by Crytek Studios in Germany and published by Ubisoft on March 23, 2014 for Microsoft Windows. But we are going to talk about my top 3 Far Cry games, or let us just say my favorite Far Cry games, which is Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4, and of course Far Cry 5. If you are going to ask why the other expansions, even the Primal, were not included here, I'm just going to say for me, these games were my big 3 Far Cry games. From Far Cry 3 to 5, the game itself shows that the game really improves due to its competitiveness and being remarkable and breathtaking.
You're breathtaking!
As you can see, the graphics of Far Cry 3 is fine, but in Far Cry 4 and 5, it is more detailed because Far Cry 3 focuses on the lightings, the shadings, and the environmental vibrance, which is just realistic because you are in a tropical island just in the Pacific, and as well as the water vibrance. But in Far Cry 4, they focus on cloudy, foggy, and cold aura of the Himalayas, while Far Cry 5 is just in the county of Montana, USA, which the environment and the structures are just a bit dark and less contrast and game, which they set up in the background, which is just fine and accurate. This is, I see, the improvements of the game. I can't even argue when it comes to the improvement, from character development, environment, to the storyline. I am not saying that they have the worst character development, either the storyline, although they have the best open world themes, which seems fair to me. The weapon details of the weapon effects like the muzzle flash were kinda bit fixed and improved. They both have their weapon modeled and detailed just the way it was. Better than the weapons of Call of Duty. Changed my mind. Some of the critics says that this is the modern Skyrim with the guns, and modern, absurd version of Assassin's Creed, which focuses on stealth, side missions, and upgrading your weapons and gears, which makes sense and makes the gameplay and mechanics more interesting. You got charismatic and flamboyant antagonists like Joseph Seed and Pagan Min. However, Far Cry 5 is a great improvement, and it has a very significant expansion, Far Cry New Dawn, or can be a standalone as well. It is connected to Far Cry 5, of course. It is set in a doomsday version of Far Cry 5, taking place 17 years after the Resist ending. It is set in the post-apocalyptic wild fictional Hope County, Montana, USA after the nuclear war. Speaking of the storyline, let's go to Far Cry 3. You are Jason Brody. You and your friends were trapped in some island near Indonesia known as Rook Islands, and you are kidnapped and about to be sold to slavery. After that, you confront Vass and Hoyt, but still, you flee the island with a bitter memory. Sometimes I felt disappointed about the story, but it makes sense. But the timeline is kinda messed up and kind of boring. In Far Cry 4, you are AJ Gale. You left America and traveled back to the region of the Himalayas, known as the Kirat, to spread your mother's ashes, and later being discovered by his mother's so-called lover, Pagan Min, or the King of Kirat, which he stands as a dictator in the game, but I consider him as one of the most remarkable villains in the franchise. Well, he could help Ajay scatter his mom's ashes in Lakshmana. So far, the love triangle of Mohan, Ishwari, and Pagan is still intriguing, But so far, I read all about the story about Mohan Gale on how he started the Kirat Civil War. Far Cry 4 has the most interesting timeline, I ain't gonna lie. Now you better know that Pagan was not a really bad guy, isn't he? Mohan was the bad guy since he was shot by AJ's mother, Ishwari. In Far Cry 5, well, you are a modern deputy officer, which you can modify if you are a male or female, fighting religious fanatics all across the county, which the antagonist, Joseph Seed, tells everyone that the end of the world is coming, which is kinda disturbing, right? Like, who cares if he is charismatic? He's disturbing. He proclaims himself as a prophet of God, which really makes no sense at all. I mean, he did that in an obscure way. On the contrary, he had a tragic past which makes him a megalomaniac he is today. But a part of this is kinda interesting, since he has a bright side despite killing innocent lives for a useless fate could be a game changer as well, right? Both of them have an interesting and a bit obscure endings, which may lead to the twist as well as the ending of Far Cry 4 between Amita, Sabal, and I have no complaints about the DLCs and expansion. I kinda like the Valley of Yetis Far Cry 4 DLC, which you are in the heart of the Himalayas and confront and hunt a lot of Yetis, which is awesome. Also, the melee weapons in Far Cry 3, you can use the machete and the Tanto dagger. In 4, you are using the Capri, and in 5, well, you can use multiple melee weapons which mostly consist of blunt weapons, which is kind of amazing too, yes. Okay, let's move on to the wildlife of Far Cry 3. We're great, and yes, they're great. They keep on focusing on the nature as well, used for loot and crafting gears. They place the animals in the right habitat, which makes the game accurate. The weapons of Far Cry, well, no doubt about it, but they made a quite good improvement which they stepped into Far Cry 4, which they made a lot of additional guns, especially the unlockable weapons after completing several side missions and campaigns. As well as Far Cry 5, it was just the same, but Far Cry 4 and 5 have a lot of guns in common compared to Far Cry 3. They're good and, of course, valuable. Though some of the supporting characters give significance to the game. Speaking of which, Agent Willis, the CIA agent, was in Far Cry 3, 4, and 5. And you should think these three Far Crys were connected? Well then, yes. So this is all about my opinions on how Far Cry improved. Let me know in the comment section below which is the best Far Cry games given in the choices. So goodbye guys, and don't forget to become a member of my Patreon. Be one of my patrons. Take care.